Building a career in medicine is one challenge. Building a business on top of it is another. Welcome to the Marquis Masters podcast. I'm Nick Franck. Today I'm joined by Dr. Smay, anesthesiologist, entrepreneur, and the president and CEO of Montgomery Anesthesia Service. Her path blends clinical expertise with leadership, from specializing in pediatric and clinical anesthesiology to developing innovative products through her company. But stepping into the business side of healthcare brought a whole new set of challenges. In this episode, we talk about what drew her to anesthesiology, what it really takes to run and grow a business, and the question a lot of people don't ask, what's actually harder, medical school or building your own business? We also get into the importance of delegation, staying authentic as a leader, and how she's now stepping into something she's long wanted to do, write her first book. Let's get into it. Joining me today on the Marquis Master podcast is the president and CEO of Montgomery Anesthesia Service, Dr. Smay. Dr. Smay, thank you so much for joining me, and how are you today?
I'm great. Excited to talk with you too, Nick.
Yeah, we've got a lot to get to today, but let's start by rewinding the clock a little bit. Let's dive back into what initially led you to get into anesthesiology in the first place.
Well, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, so I was in medical school when I decided to go into anesthesiology. But ultimately, the reason why I chose anesthesiology, which certainly I didn't even know about when I started medical school, I chose that because I think it fit my personality. And during the time that I actually was exposed to it during my fourth year rotation, it was like I came home. It just felt right. And I think a lot of the things that I find myself doing now often are that way because it feels right, or it is in keeping with what my talents are or my values. And so that's kind of why I ended up with anesthesia, because it works for me.
Yeah, I've found I have not had, but my wife has had 2 kids, and we've worked with some amazing anesthesiologists over that time. And it's not really something that I ever really thought about until actually being in the delivery room and all that, and how much is actually going on from that. And I know you're on the pediatric side of it as well. So do you deal with some of that, being in the birthing area or in the delivery room, all of that?
Yes, I definitely do OB anesthesia as part of my practice as well. And it's fun. It's really fun to help women be comfortable when they're having their babies.
Yeah,
and safe.
Well, let's talk about Montgomery Anesthesia Service and a little bit about your company. What do you think sets that apart? And what do you think for you specifically sets you apart as an entrepreneur and a business leader in your field?
Yeah, I mean, it really, as a business leader, from my standpoint, I think I initially started to try to mold myself into the kind of leader I thought I should be, or I thought was popular, or what I was trained to do in residency from the leaders that have trained me. But as I've gone on in practice and taken on a lot of different roles, I really feel like what sets myself apart as a business leader and entrepreneur is that I want to be authentic in the way that I lead and the endeavors that I choose to pursue. And by that, I mean, again, doing what makes me feel good, what makes me feel useful, what makes me feel like I'm actually doing things that I value, rather than, trying to mold myself into something different, just sort of orchestrating my business around me and my gifts.
Yeah. Okay. Putting you on the spot, what was harder, med school or starting a business?
That's a good question. Probably medical school, I think. Yeah. And, it's like starting a business is kind of easy, right? Like you just do it. But, whether or not you are successful or not really is not in the mix when you're starting it. So I definitely have to say medical school is harder.
Yeah. And so now, it's almost, it's 13 plus years of doing this. Like, what do you think you've learned from year one to now to today, year 13, like getting over obstacles and challenges, and how different do you feel you are today than you were when you started?
Well, I was young in my career. I wanted to start gaining more and more skills. When I first started Montgomery Anesthesia service, I wanted to get into sort of aesthetics. And so I started learning the aesthetics business and started to gain more skills in that arena. But what I realized was, as a physician business owner, I couldn't, I trained as a doctor to do things, to be a practitioner, to see patients and basically make money while I'm doing things. Whereas in business, you really have to, in order to be truly successful and to have the kinds of impacts that you want to have and the revenue you want to have, you can't be doing as much work. You have to delegate a lot more. And so once I realized that as a true entrepreneur, I needed to take a back seat in a more advisory, strategic type of role. I've learned that I need to step back and try to find people and find people to implement the things that I need to get done. And so I think, in general, it's about really, it went from working much harder to working much smarter over the course of those years.
Yeah. What was the biggest learning curve to when you finally found maybe the right people or learning how to delegate? Because I know for some business owners and entrepreneurs, like that's the hardest part, right? Is like it's your thing. You started it. It's your vision, and to hand little pieces of that off to new people. Or did you find like how did you get over maybe that initial like, okay, I know this is mine, but I got to do it. Like I got to hand this off to somebody else.
Yeah. So I think what made me realize that I needed to do that was truly going to business school and actually doing that MBA type of curriculum made me realize I had to do it. But then the process of starting to hire people to do the things that I do, or to take on the vision that I have and use their own talents to create what I wanted to create. That has been a lot. Doing it, getting to the point where I did it, was really hard because it's just about letting go and recognizing that I can't do everything. But then the other part is, once I did, the first person I hired was my executive assistant, and she had to sort of pull things out of me to take things away from me. And we now have a very teasing type of relationship where she's like, "Oh, are you trying to do everything again?" Or, like, well, wait, what is my role here again? So it's gotten to be funny, but it's a process that I'm really enjoying. I'm enjoying sort of taking that pressure off myself. It feels better. I feel less stressed. I feel less burdened, and again, what makes me feel good is what I really want to do, and it does make me feel good now. And so I'm ready for more delegation, to really allow other people to actually create my own visions, and that's kind of where I see myself now, as more of a visionary, somebody who's into strategy and taking a back seat.
Yeah. And speaking of that vision, especially recently, your company started creating some new innovative products. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yes. So I am just now creating a longevity brand called Beacon. And it's basically a protocol, a longevity protocol that I use for myself right now to stay young, because I'm 50. I'll be 53 this year, and I have 2 little kids, and I do take longevity supplements, but I take a lot of them, and I have all these vitamin holders for my daily AM and PM vitamins. And I thought, why don't I create a system that's easy to use that takes all the supplements that you need for longevity and actually organizes it for you. And so it's a 24-hour protocol with cellular repair, energy formula, and a skin and longevity formula called Glow. So 3 components, AM, PM, and skin.
Have you ever wondered how some people's stories live on, not just through their work, but through history itself? For nearly 130 years, Marquis Who's Who has been documenting the lives of leaders, innovators, and changemakers across every profession. From CEOs and scientists to artists and educators, Marquis has captured the stories behind success, the people who define our times. Being listed in Marquis Who's Who isn't just recognition, it's taking control of your personal brand and using it to create a meaningful and impactful legacy. It's a record of your life's work, preserved, published, and accessible to generations who will study, research, and be inspired by your contribution. If you've built something meaningful and you've made an impact in your field or community, this is how you ensure your story is told and your personal brand is maintained accurately with integrity. Visit MarquisWho'sWho.com to learn more about how you or someone you admire can be featured, because history remembers those who take the time to record it.
One, and not only are you doing that, but you're also working on a book. So you clearly have a lot going on. Can you talk a little bit about what the book's about and what your process has been for putting that together?
Sure. So when I was in my early 20s, I was a member of a church, and one of the elder members of that church was a female physician who took a liking to me, and she mentored me. Her name was Elaine. I think her name is Elaine Ferguson, and she wrote a book, and it was a sci-fi book. It was based on sort of the time around Y2K. So it was in the 90s. And it was sci-fi and it was fiction. I was reading a lot of fiction at the time. She asked me to read, and I loved the story. And I thought, wow, I wish I could write something like this, because I was an avid reader at that time. And I thought, I want to write myself a sci-fi book at some point. And the desire kind of kept increasing over time, because it matured toward my late 20s, early 30s when I went to medical school and started learning a lot more about, clinical research and the things that are going on to improve the delivery of healthcare and immunology and vaccines and things like that when I was in medical school. And so it matured then, and I'm making a very large transition in my life right now. And so I thought this was probably the best time to write. And so and then there's a lot of tools now. Like, I just found out about this AI tool earlier this year called Claude. And so I started doing a little bit of research and trying to come up with an outline for the book. And I was able to do that with Claude within like a 2-day period of time. And then I kind of got excited, like, okay, I can actually use a tool to make things, so that I can use my time in sort of bite-sized bits instead of, I'm not a writer all the time. So this is something that I have to do kind of in discrete periods of time. So I thought, I have a tool to let me do that. I'm going to do it. And so at the beginning of the year, I made the plan to write the book. I made the plan to start writing in April. And I just got my outline done for the whole book this past week. So it is a book. I do have a title. The title is Imago. It is an 8-book series and a 2-book wrap-up at the end. And it is about an innovation that is in the psychiatric arena, and another innovation that is in the neuroimaging and neurohistochemical analysis arena. And those two innovations create an international panic because it sort of the innovation sort of allows law enforcement to prevent crimes occurring by certain individuals. And so it's kind of like it has a very, I don't know how old you are, but did you ever hear of this early 2000s movie called The Minority Report?
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cruise was in it. It was kind of a big box office hit. Mm-hmm. It sort of has the Minority Report kind of issue where you kind of know who the criminals are already, but you want to let them live their lives and intercept the crime before before it happens. Well, it's not that temporally oriented, but just to not give too much of a clue about it. But it has a similar kind of what would you call it, conflict.
Sure.
Where human nature and letting people have free will versus, controlling something that you have insight to as a government or law enforcement agency. So, and then the book will be set in multiple countries, and it's, like I said, the book series, and there are rolling protagonists, but a main protagonist that wraps up the book wraps up the series in the last two books. So it's a long endeavor, but it's something I've always wanted to do, is write an epic fiction, sci-fi book series, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I've had a lot of this say. I mean, when you're talking about that and the passion behind that, I've also had very similar passions about doing something very similar in the same realm of writing, and I have a big passion for writing as well. And I kind of my issue is I always like have an idea and I go down it for a little bit, and then I think of something else, and then I write about something else for a little bit. My struggle has always been just narrowly focusing on one thing and sticking to that for a long period of time.
But I think for me, why it always was this, like, I want a medical innovation. I want this kind of thing to do. Like, I think probably because my interests are somewhat narrow, or my expertise is somewhat narrow, it's easy to kind of pick that one thing. And my innovations, the two innovations that I came up with, are really close to my heart. And so it's just one of those things. It just easy to focus on, I guess.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what you mean.
I love that. Well, I look forward to reading it one day when it all comes out. We'll have to do a follow-up when after maybe the first few come out, and we can kind of chat about the storylines and go through that.
Love
so
that.
Clearly, from owning your own business, being a doctor, releasing new products, writing a book, have a family at home, very busy, have a lot going on. When you think and take that step back of yourself, like, what kind of role does family play for you in terms of your success and how you view your work and your life?
Yeah. So when I think of that, I think of my family of origin first. And then, I can talk more about my current family, my children, and my husband. And so I ultimately think that the reason I'm successful is because of my family. I think that's the reason I'm who I am, is because of my family of origin. Recently, my dad turned 94, and he turned 94 in February, and his church invited Henry Louis Gates Jr., the Skip Gates, the guy who's into Ancestry.com, and he has his own little show. Well, anyway, he did research about my dad's ancestry, and presented him with a family tree that identified ancestors that none of us knew about, certainly not him, two of them were slaves. One was born into slavery, and one was possibly enslaved as a young person, or born into slavery. We don't know how she was a slave, and then they were able to gain their freedom, and they, our ancestors owned land in the early 1800s and were entrepreneurs. And I suspect that that's probably why I'm successful. It's in my DNA, right? And then I think of like the role family plays in my success today, like with my own family. It's important for me to be at my best in order to be the best parent for my girls. And so for me, this transition from clinical practice to entrepreneurship has had everything to do with them. I've been a very successful clinical physician, but I've not been a very successful entrepreneur. And I'm choosing to do that, hoping to be successful over the course of time, by honoring myself and my own needs and my own values. And so for me to be at my best, I have to do that. And for my kids, I love that. They're like your little hearts. They just, so for them to thrive is the only way I can truly be happy. So it's a give and take type of situation that I feel is inextricably linked to my success on the front end from my family of origin and my own children's thriving and happiness. So.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about thriving and being happy outside of all the work that you're doing with your girls, with your family, like how do you spend your free time when you're not busy writing or working?
Right. That's funny. I try to do yoga. I try to, to stretch myself, and I try to work out and keep moving because I've become a lot more sedentary. The less clinical work I'm doing, the more sedentary I become. So the more I have to really be mindful about, moving otherwise, actually working out and going to the gym. I read. Right now I listen a lot to books on Audible. And I, spend time with my kids doing fun things. Like we went to the circus the other week. So I try to do fun things with them that entertain them. What else do I do? I do a lot of things other than work, but what are they? I think that's about all I can think of at the moment.
I have found a very similar vibe of like, especially when you have kids under a certain age, like it can be hard to go to the gym and to go work. And so you got to like find those little pockets to do it. And for me, there's like this stretch after in the morning where after we drop them off at daycare or school, like it's myself and the dog and we can go for a walk. And I'm very similar. Like I listen to books too, like on tape. So we go for a 30-minute walk with the dog, listen to a book, 30 minutes or a podcast, and then come back. And I'm like, okay, this is my time. Like this is like my little window to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's what I do. At bath time, I take the dogs out for a walk. Literally, that's what I do when they're bathing.
Kids, so great.
Yep.
When talking a little bit about, you in the community, and, you've talked about your family a lot, and you've talked about, like what success kind of means to you. What does that look like in terms of your community? Like, do you find value in giving back, and how important is that for you?
Yeah, it's always been important to me to give back. It's just been a part of how I was raised. I used to do things like find, if someone, people will always approach you about things that they're trying to do. And, I remember supporting this all boys school for about 10 years in the last, just because they had such high, college acceptance rates, and it was all for, at-risk male youth. And so I donated to that on a regular basis for about 10 years. When the school closed, I stopped. Things like Now I will serve on an advisory board for healthcare companies that are startups. Like I'm really interested in a little bit of venture capital, a little bit of investing in startup companies now. I'm in an organization called Jack and Jill of America for my kids, which is a sort of family organization. And I give back to the kids in our Jack and Jill community by hosting and volunteering and doing that kind of thing with the kids that are in my own children's community. But, just the little things, like I said, that satisfy a value that I have that I want to support, that's what I'll do. So, and more now I'm giving money than my time. But when I was young, I'd give my time more than money because I didn't have any money, so
Right.
which is
Right.
but that's just part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I always try to give back in whatever way that I can.
Right. It's the little things, right? It's the little things, especially in a community, that just go a long way. And whatever is the way you can best do it. And for me, in my portion of the life, it's, my kids and I go to the parks and we try to, when we see trash, it's like, hey, let's make sure we're picking that up. And whether it's ours or not, it doesn't really matter. Right. Like
Yeah,
it's just like
absolutely.
these little things to hopefully build good habits for kind of later in life that, just beautify a little bit, make things a little bit cleaner and a little bit nicer for the next person that comes along. A few more questions, Dr. Smay, and then I'll let you go. This one might be a little bit more lighthearted, but if you could have lunch with anybody, you can call anyone on the phone, whether they're past or present, living or not, who would it be and why?
I love Beyonce. I mean, I love her. Like, she's probably the star that I'd want to meet and just sit and have lunch with and just see what she's like in real life. Because she's such a big success and such a huge icon of, entertainment in this country. So I'd love to meet Beyonce and get some of that energy. She's got way good energy.
Yes, I've done a lot of these, and this is the first time anyway. I'm surprised that this is the first time someone has said Beyonce. Like, I feel like that would be like the top of so many people's lists.
Never. I mean, I honestly, I don't know as much about her music as I should. Her music is not necessarily my style, but just her iconic, star status I definitely, she's definitely one of those people I'd want to go have lunch with.
Yeah.
But if I were to think of a dead person, I would probably want to just somebody who's not alive, I'd probably want to go and find an ancestor of mine somehow and just pick their brains about the past.
Right. I know. Just go back a couple generations and just, what was that like? Yeah, that would be really curious. I love that answer though. That's again, the first time I've heard Beyonce and I love it. Speaking of kind of thinking back, if you could go back to your 17, 18-year-old self, or that time where you chose med school's the direction I want to go, do you think you would have made, knowing what you know now and where life has taken you now, do you think med school, you would have done it all over again? Or was there any choices along the way that you're well, maybe I would have done maybe this rather than this? Or do you think you're hey, nope, I made all of I wouldn't change anything?
Yeah, I'd probably change some things. I'm sure I would. But it's hard for me to sort of go back and that far and say what would I have changed? Because I feel like I've made the right choices at the right time in my life. But if I had to make them earlier, maybe I would have made some different choices, But the way I see things is that as long as I'm honest and as long as I'm flexible, things are going to always change. So I can just, ebb and flow with whatever happens and make the right choice in the moment. And that's kind of more how I live my life rather than looking back and saying, I wish I'd done this differently. I tend not to do that just because it makes me anxious. So I just think, well, I've done best I can. And as long as I'm able to be flexible and ebb and flow with the change, I'll probably still make some decent decisions going forward.
Right. Yeah. And when you scope out too, like when you think about through both your professional life, through your personal life, is there any like lesson that you think that you've learned that's been something that's the most important to you?
Yeah. Be authentic. Just be authentic. Don't try to fit into someone else's mold. And yeah, that's probably the hardest lesson I've learned. I think and I think not to be hard on myself really, but I think when you are always kind of following a protocol or following in other people's footsteps I'm a teachable and coachable type of person. I'm always looking for good advice and I'm always looking to emulate someone else. But I think at some point, we all need to I believe, like my faith tells me that I have all of the resources that I need in myself to do whatever it is that I want to do. So the best thing to do is to be authentically me in so doing. And that's kind of what I've learned and how I have to live my life now.
Yeah. I feel like the older I get, the more that becomes more true. And maybe it's a feeling of less caring about what other people think about like who I am as a person. And I don't know if that's exactly it, or maybe it's just like life experience. It's like, no, I'm just going to be me. But that's just so true about, I feel like, the older I get, the more authentic to who I am, I become.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. Dr. Smay, before I let you go, what does being a Marquis Who's Who listee mean to you?
Well, it's got a lot of prestige, and it feels like an honor to be a listee. And so, it feels like an honor.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate so much you taking time out of your day and joining me. It was such a fun conversation. And when you get all those books written, it would be so fun to have you back to talk about them.
I'd love that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, if this conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing the episode with someone in healthcare, leadership, anyone interested in how to be more innovative and grow together in a meaningful, impactful way. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this, make sure to visit marquiswhoswho.com and subscribe to the Marquis Masters podcast wherever you're listening. Once again, my thanks to Dr. Jules Smay for joining me. I'm Nick Franck, and we'll catch you for the next Marquis Masters podcast.